And please welcome back Ms. Leyla.
Okay.
Told me I have to speak slower now.
Yeah. So I did tell Leyla that she can breathe and we have some space. Well, anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Like Leyla said, you guys must be so tired. But we want to keep this one really conversational. And the reason why it can be conversational, because I know Leyla.
Yeah, we know each other.
From way back. So it's kind of surreal, actually, for me to be sharing the stage with her. I never thought it would happen, but it did. The reason I actually came into systems thinking, life-centered design, well, my background is environmental science, but there was a time when I was teaching still in Benilde, when I was really looking for ways in terms of catalyzing or fire-starting transformation, and I was looking for tools. And I came upon the Unschool. So I'm an Unschool fellow, way back in
2017.
Oh, you know more than I do.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I met Leyla. So it's so surreal that she's actually here, and we're gonna have a discussion. We're gonna have a conversation. So yay! And I know, Leyla, that the work of transformation, transitioning to circular economy, is a work of transformation. It's something that's not easy, and it is actually hinged on having champions.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that the Unschool is in the business of actually seeding or raising up champions. Yeah. Right? So I'm wondering, like, I know in
Look at this champion.
Yay! No, this is a topic that I'm so burdened with, because I know in this room, we have a room filled with champions. And as champions, it's not easy. A lot of times we feel alone, right? We feel isolated. We can't talk to anyone. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, Leyla, what could be the barriers and opportunities for champions to actually do this work of catalyzing?
Yeah, and it's something that I hear a lot with people who are working in organizations. They have a passion or interest in this stuff, but the organization itself doesn't. Or they have a very kind of small interest. And so they go and take the initiative to educate themselves, get the new skills, and then they become like this, like, come on guys, like, look at that horrible stuff we're doing over there, let's do something better. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, that person. And it starts to become like, they get shamed for it sometimes, or other people don't want to confront the reality, so they really isolate them. And that is a really, really sad reality to what it takes to help make change, is that you have to also maintain that energy. I have these 3 Fs. It's not rude. So I've worked with hundreds of companies all over the world, and lots of executives and lots of people in power, and they bring me in and they're like, razzle dazzle, like, let's get everybody caring about the planet. And I've learned over the years that there are 3 barriers to change, and they all start with F. And the first one is framing.
You made this up, the
yes.
3 Fs.
Framing. Framing is how we cognitively frame things. So it used to be, and it's not so much anymore, that if you talked about sustainability, people immediately thought of tree-hugging hippies, green stuff, brown paper bags, sometimes hemp. Like, it was all immediately, the cognitive reaction was like, oh, that's boring, and that's not very fun. So the problem is that is called cognitive framing, and we have to rewrite the narrative so that when somebody hears sustainability, they go, oh my God, that's the biggest innovation opportunity of our time, which it is, by the way. And that it isn't like this depressing, boring thing that we need to, kick down the road to somebody else. That it's actually this really amazing opportunity for us each to have some purpose and fulfillment in our roles, but also to, rectify some of the problems of the past. So we have to reframe the narrative. And so, what I like to do then is, the first thing I do is, rather than tell people, I tend to ask people, like, well, what do you think this is about? And they kind of then air their grievances up front. And then you can find a way to help them see a different pathway. And so we've got framing. The next one is fatigue. Fatigue. So fatigue is remedied by sleep, people. If you're tired, you should rest. And don't you find that the next day, like, everything's better? Sometimes. So the thing is that if you are the one constantly fighting for change, if you are the one, exerting your energy into a system that doesn't want it, then you will be fatigued. And so you need to have personal restorative and restorative practices to help make sure that you still have that energy to make change. And then the last one is fear. And the thing about fear is that it's very natural and normal for us to be fearful of things that are scary or are unknown. But fear triggers the what's called the limbic system in the human brain, which is the fight, flight, or freeze response. And so, like, if I see a spider, because I'm from Australia, I squeal like a 5-year-old and run out of the room. I don't know what happens to you guys. Do they kill you here? Because they all kill you in Australia. And they're big and very hairy, and they come into your houses. Anyway, so that's my limbic response to that threat. But for a lot of people, hearing about climate change or environmental destruction or social issues, they avoid it because they don't want to have to deal with it. So the response is freeze, or it is, fight. They argue against it. And if you understand and have empathy to the fact that sometimes people's reactions to these things are actually not a cognitively rational reaction, like me screaming like a 5-year-old and running out of the room, like it's so embarrassing, but I cannot control it because it is my reaction to that threat. And so then we can work on helping people overcome some of those irrational responses to very rational problems. So yeah, that's my problems. Did I give you enough opportunities?
Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe just speak about the barriers first. I wanna build on the fatigue. Because I feel like, well, for me, honestly, it's something that I've felt. I'm still feeling it every now and then, but as you say, sleep is just the remedy or access
But not
to
just
nature.
sleep, but like anything restorative, right?
So for me, one of the things that I think champions face is, you get swallowed by the system. There's always business as usual, right? You're always going against the flow, and it's just so easy to get swallowed again and be swept by the flow. So that's why for me, the opportunity also is that I think we should also, aside from sleep and rest, is that we need to find a space, a community that's safe space, or the tribe that you could actually bounce off ideas with and just talk to people about it, right? So I feel like that's maybe something that's not always available to us, but something maybe in this room, it's something that we could do.
And it's actually in that eco-anxiety toolkit. That's what we found. One of the recommendations for workplaces is to actually have an open dialogue about the concerns people have, because most people work in jobs that are contributing to the climate crisis. And people are not dumb. They can see the relationship. And so there's a lot of disassociation that has to happen. And people are kind of in their home life, in their personal life, they're feeling one way about the world, and then they go to their job and they have to almost put those feelings aside and just kind of contribute to this system that they might not believe in. So opening a space for dialogue and conversation and being proactive for the actions that can be taken. And, in any change endeavor, you have big goals, but you need small wins, many small wins to get to that big goal. Like, if you want to learn how to exercise, which I did recently, I'm not going to start with a 10K marathon. It's not going to work. I have to do, they say, if you want to learn how to run, you have to do little spurts of jogging, which is totally what I'm doing. And then you're going to build up your resilience to the pain of it. That was a joke. Anyway. It's painful. Concrete is hard.
Well, do trail running. That's even harder. Anyway, sorry, change topic. Opportunities, Leyla. What do you think? What are the opportunities for champions that they can seize and be hopeful about?
Well, look, I think what's really important is every single one of us has a unique set of something to offer. Some people can sing, some people can cook, some people can talk very confidently. And I think starting with understanding your own contribution, where do you have the strengths? And that, with sustainability, with circularity, it's very intuitive, actually. Once you get into it, isn't it? You came to the art school, it was a week, right? But once you start learning these things, you're like, oh yeah, everything is interconnected, and I am part of this big system, and I can make change. And yeah, I might need to spend some time on the internet learning this particular thing, but I can start to contribute already. So on the macro level, I think it's really important to identify your skills and figure out how you can contribute. And then on the micro, the big level, yeah, that's my brain now is, on the big picture, like organizational change, it does take time, but you do need to facilitate a group of champions who are willing to drive that. And I think the best way to do that is to use levers. So what I often recommend to people working in companies is to go and make a PowerPoint of the 3 competitors in their industry that are already doing sustainability, and you take it to your boss and you go, see, we're falling behind. And most bosses go, oh, do it, because they don't want to fall behind. So, and nearly every industry has people doing this pretty progressively. So, there's the developing your own skills, and then of course there's the kind of convincing the system that it needs to change, and finding your allies and your workplace in your industry that you're going to be able to share experiences with and build strength together.
And I think, we have I see a lot of young people in the room. And
are there young people in here?
I think so. Already so many there and outside as well. A lot in the university actually.
They all look really old to me.
And one's young and young thinkers. But anyway, I think Architect Royal Pineda mentioned earlier that the times are changing, and your sense of being Filipino is also, it's evolving, right? And I feel for me that is an opportunity, because when times are changing, the ways of doing business, the ways of doing work is also changing.
And actually, if I can just say, there's a thing from the sciences. It's called habit disruptions, and when there's natural changes, you move house, you have a baby, you get a new job, or your whole country gets hit by a typhoon. There's a moment where change is so obvious that you can insert lots of changes because people won't resist it as much. So you're more open.
So it's an opportunity.
Absolutely, a huge opportunity.
So we have to watch out for the next typhoon.
Or the next time you have a baby or move house. Or your boss does.
Right, because in the field of experience design, those are your most memorable moments. And they're the ones that's most transformative.
Right, but there's so much change that you don't notice all the other change. So you can kind of tack on some other changes to that system. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody needs to prompt me if I need to open the floor for Q&A. But okay, I have a next question, Leyla, is that shifting from the linear to a circular economy requires you talk about this a lot, the whole of system approach. And I think earlier they talk about holism, right? So I was just wondering, can you share what you sense are leverage points for affecting change?
Okay, well, in any system, you have to understand it before you can identify. Maybe you should clarify what a leverage point is. So basically, everything is a system. Nothing is in isolation because everything is interdependent. So within any system, small system, big system, there are bits in it that are really important, bits that are not important. So if you have a car, you could take a windscreen wiper off, car's still okay. Take the wheel off, maybe take the engine out, right? These. If you cut your hand off, which I don't recommend, you would probably still be okay. But if you tried to take your brain out, most people would not be okay. Some people probably don't have them to begin with, so I don't know. That was such a dad joke. Sorry, I just really channeled my dad just then. I couldn't help it. But the thing is that so every system has critical parts, and so again, with a car, you make one small gesture with the steering wheel, and the car moves, right? So it's a small intervention that creates a big outcome. And so within any system, a small intervention can have a big effect, a ripple effect. And so in a natural system, sometimes taking a keystone species out creates collapse.
Let's give an example.
Corals.
Okay.
Corals. Did you know that corals, you understand, I'm wondering with my accent sometimes, corals in the ocean, you have coral reefs here, right? We have coral reefs. Are yours also dying? Yeah. So sad. But did you know that when they're bleaching, it's actually a mass exodus of the microorganism-y thingies that live. That's a symbiotic system. So the color is not in the coral, mostly. It's in the other little guys who, I can't remember their names. Any biologists? Can anyone remember their names? It's not algae, yeah, it's like a...
Zooplankton.
Yeah, right? Anywho, they live together, and when the, I forgot the point of this. I got very distracted by the death of the corals. You asked me for an example. Does anyone else? Oh, leverage points. I was getting there. Thank you, everybody. So, what I'm trying to explain is systems and system collapse. So in this case, the coral, that is the sign of the system collapsing, right? So in any system, there are very important parts, and then there are parts that can have very significant effects if intervened in. So whilst the collapse is bad, you can also intervene in a system with small things that make really significant positive change, because this is a negative impact, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because you asked me a question I cannot answer in an isolated thing, because it's like any system. So if you give me a problem, like one that is solvable in 3 minutes, I can answer that question. Maybe the audience want to give us a problem. Go on. Traffic. My God, this is like the 5th time I've been asked this question since I got here. And I was like, it's not that. You know that everywhere has traffic, guys. You know that, right? Not Bhutan. That's going to be everyone's response to everything now. Not Bhutan.
They say Metro Manila is 5th worst in the world.
What's the top?
Oh, I don't know.
Is it Mumbai? Because Mumbai is pretty bad. Probably. I don't know. Sorry, Mumbai. It's a great city. Has lots of very good vegetarian food. Anyway. Okay, traffic. Okay, so traffic is a system of cooperation, right? You get in a vehicle that is a death machine to you and the other people around you, and you have to navigate not killing yourself and other people. So the whole system is self-preservation, right? And in that process of managing self-preservation, you have all these control mechanisms, right? You have lights, you have people, I notice you've got a lot of guys with big gloves who do things. Are they police?
Traffic enforcer.
They're an enforcer.
Because in Australia, you don't have those. You just have the roundabouts.
We have traffic lights and roundabouts, and then police officers who are practicing their doing that every once in a while. Anyway, this is really going to go off the rails if I... Right, so first of all, the social side of it is that the system is, everybody's trying to achieve the same objective in the system. It's get somewhere safely, critical. And so you've got this social organization where everybody's trying to not kill themselves or other people, preferably. But then you have all these controllers that prevent people from getting to that goal, right? Getting to where they want. And so people get angry. And so then you have a very tense and toxic system. And physically toxic too, because you're breathing in the exhaust of cars. So the whole system is very, it starts off in a way that's quite altruistic. People don't want to kill it, but it ends up being pretty horrible. And so part of the problem with something like traffic is what incentivizes people. So we know that mass transit, car share, blah, blah, blah. You can redesign the roads. Don't make your roads bigger because that makes traffic worse. Time and time again, right? You can make roads smaller. You can change people's culture so that bikes are cool, but you're not going to ride a bike if you're inhaling toxic chemicals, right, from the exhaust. So you have all of these different system interventions, and there isn't one system intervention other than eliminating humans that would actually solve that problem. Oh, no, I know the solution, teleportation.
Yeah.
Right? But the point that I'm getting at is, so if I was to really truly try and use a systems approach to solve the problem of traffic in Manila, you have to understand all of those things, but then you'd have to think about what are the points where there's really critical problems, and how do you, is it a social problem? Is it a physical problem? Most of the time people think traffic, let's build more roads. That does not work. That makes it worse.
So I think that's a classic example of a wrong framing of the problem.
Well, also, it's just a solution that reinforces the problem, which is like recycling, because that's this very engineer reductive approach. Whereas I think the best way to fix is to actually work on that social element of somehow figuring out. So, I'll give you a good example, actually. Colombia, not Bhutan. This is a solution from another country. For anyone who's watching this video later, just want to say, sitting in the front row is Bhutan representative gross national happiness. We've all been very impressed. So this might seem otherwise it's like we're picking on Bhutan, but we're not. We all love Bhutan. Okay, so
we need to talk about our context. This is our context.
Okay, so there was a mayor of the city of Bogota, also a bee-named place. Maybe that's something. And he used his Antonius Marcus.
Is his Lerner?
Do you know about this?
Yeah, Jamie Lerner.
No, Antonius Marcus. He maybe you have another one too. Maybe we have multiple Bogota mayors. Anyway, whatever. He tried to fix the issue of jaywalking. All these people were dying when they walked across the street, bad traffic. So he did three things. First, he hired mimes. Do you guys know what mimes are? Yeah. Okay, dressed in black and white to socially shame people by following them. You've got to bet your life that people stopped jaywalking immediately because there's this creepy guy like imitating them. The second thing he did was he gave drivers this little card that was a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and people could flash it rather than doing the other thing that people tend to do. They had this kinder, nicer way of saying, well, you're doing a good job, or I don't like that. So it was almost like a pre-like button on, this was a while, well before Facebook. So he used all these social, what he called like social arts interventions to help create a different social context that really changed people's behaviors. And so for me, this is like a far more progressive way of trying to change the system than just building more roads or putting more traffic lights. There are technical interventions. You know, we know that actually roundabouts do make people behave differently because they have to like look at people, and whereas traffic lights, they're passive, you just passively wait. So there's a number of different points of intervention. There's no one solution to this problem. And that's the thing. Most people just want one solution. Just fix the traffic. Well, you know, human needs often, like people need to, well, you know what would fix your traffic is if you change your work culture. I will get there eventually. But then because that's the driving, it's a driving force, but it doesn't, you know, anyway, everything's interconnected. There's multiple points of intervention. Any system is worth learning the parts that make it. You have to understand the function, why are people engaging in a system, and then you have this really interesting puzzle that you're trying to figure out how to put together in a better way.
So I want to connect with the first question is that we want to help the champions in the room.
Oh, no.
So I guess, you know, we want to help the champions in the room, and sometimes we feel like, you know, this is a lot of things that we have to do. There's so much points in the systems that we need to nudge or change or shift. That's why I feel like in the work of systems thinking and systemic problem solving is that we need to work with other people. We need to collaborate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, collaboration in general is always a useful endeavor because, you know, you're locked into the perspective that you have. This is the cool thing about being you, is nobody else knows what it's like to be you. We are absolutely kind of contained by the system boundary of our own self. God, that sounded very profound.
Say it again. The system's boundary of yourself.
Yes, because your skin is a system boundary, right? It holds you together. It holds your whole being as one. And so you are contained by this experience of what you know, only you know. So if you want to understand someone else's experience or the problem from another perspective, the best thing to do is to talk to other people about it and to engage and to find ways of potentially getting different perspectives, which is why, you know, you come to things like this, is to network, to meet, to talk. But a lot of the time you have chit-chat conversations rather than like deep. So after this, you have to go out and find a human you've never met before, and you have to say, what's the one problem you want to solve? And maybe you both have the same problem, and then you could like get married or get a job or something. I don't know. We've
That
always
jumped too
done
quickly.
of like, you know, the like sustainability Tinder where it's just like, I want to solve traffic. Actually, no one's allowed to say traffic. It's an easy problem for you to try and solve.
Okay, so this is perhaps the last question from my end,
And then it's over to you guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, for me, it says here, design beyond desire. And we were talking about this one the other night. It's interesting that this is the title of the conference. It seems like desire have earned such a bad reputation in the context
I'm
of
pretty
commercial.
sure if you're a billionaire, desire does not have a bad reputation.
So I remember Pam earlier in the panel, she talked about the need to desire for new choices, desire for new, maybe not things, but just have new options for what to desire. So I'm just curious, like in circular economy, one of the biggest R is reframing and rethinking, right? I'm just curious, like how could we actually start to rethink? How might we make the work of transformational work or transitioning towards circular economy more desirable? I mean, this whole concept of having a regenerative lifestyle, something that's not tearjerker or what, but something that's really more desirable. I'm just curious if there's ways we can hack it.
Well, I think the mechanism of desire has been so manipulated by mass consumerism. Like I made that point multiple times. And so all of the systems that support consumption without purpose can be equally used to facilitate engagement for a better outcome, right? So I mentioned dark patterning and all these types of cognitive tools. We know heuristics. We know there's a lot of things we can do as designers to get people to walk in a particular way or think a particular way. And at this point in time, design serves consumerism. That's its primary purpose, which is pretty sad because it's an incredible tool that could also be used to serve society to help solve some of these really complex problems. So I actually think it's really about understanding the tools we already have and transforming those tools into techniques that help achieve that better end. So we still make products and services, we still design incredibly beautiful things, and we still have a wonderful, progressive, technological advanced society, but we're eliminating waste and we're ensuring that everything we produce is in line with the natural, like protecting and not even protecting, working within the systems that sustain life. Because right now we work against that accidentally. Like most people aren't intentionally doing this, except for some people. I won't name names. You could probably think who I'm thinking about. They
Starts with a letter.
I forgot what I was saying. I distracted myself. Desire, reconfiguring the systems. So yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately we need to desire a better future to start with. I think most of us do. Most people do want to live in a happy place. And then I do really think that manipulating human needs for commercial gains needs to be transformed, because that is the present economy that we live in. Into saying that the amount of exploitation that has to exist and the horrendous system of maintaining poverty so that this consumeristic cycle can continue is fundamental flaw of humanity. Because in order for certain people to be rich, other people have to stay poor. And that to me is one of the most profoundly, tragic things about this hyper-consumerist society, is that certain people get to have a lot of stuff they don't need, whilst other people don't even get to have enough sustenance to live a dignified life.
Right. And just building on that, I think as Filipinos and maybe even as Asians, we have something fundamentally good going on with us because we're not an individualistic society, right? So we always think in collectives and families and communities. So I feel like that's such a superpower that
it's something that those of us from the West can learn.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, happiness comes through connection, right? And that most Western cultures are neoliberalistic, they're individualistic, and they have the highest rates of youth suicide, of depression, anxiety. That's not to say I'm sure you don't have these similar problems here, but this is a, disconnection really creates loneliness as one of the world's biggest killers because people are so disconnected. So, there's so many this is a beautiful thing to share with the world.
Yeah, super. And I was just thinking, like, when you talked about the ISO, which is what you said happened last month.
Yeah, 2 months.
This makes it desirable, right?
Sure, if you want to read standards, which I did, I never thought that I would get excited and stay up until midnight until a bunch of standards gets released. And I did, and I was like, oh my God, they're based on systems thinking.
Yeah. So I feel like this is something that we should celebrate because honestly, for me, I've long time coming, and finally it's here. That there is an ISO for helping us really transition to a circular economy.
And it's all about design, by the way, guys. Like, design is mentioned multiple times. Nice. There's like strategies for it. Yeah. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that's been spearheading the circular economy for a decade, they openly admit that the only tool that's really going to help us do this is design. So our time is here.
Yeah, so I feel like this is something, it's a win and something we should celebrate and have a beer
Let's let them ask a question because we haven't I know, tired.
Okay, so we're going to open the floor for questions.
They're probably all traumatized and tired, and none of them will ask, oh wow, look, there's an arm, there's another arm. Do you want to come up on stage? Do you have a mic? Do you have a mic?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Come yell, speaking to this.
Hello, good evening. Marvelous stuff.
It is the evening already, isn't it?
Just become with near wrapping up National Design Conference Week talks. In mind to executing your concept of circular economy, many who are not actual designers or who do not consider themselves designers, but instead do wish to execute this, I would say, unfound system in their lives. What would you recommend is a good attempt to understand it through emulation at the home, the personal, or in the mundane? What's a good way for us to...
But like individually, how do you kind of embrace
suppose
this?
I don't consider myself a designer. I go home.
Like a citizen designer. Yeah, well, certainly every action you take in the economy influences the things that are designed. So what you buy matters.